Right now, we want to celebrate the latest edition and issue of Iowa History Journal. When we do that, we always check in with our dear friend Michael to talk more about why people need to pick up this latest issue and all the rich history that Iowa has to offer. Good morning.
Good morning, Jackie. Good morning, Lou. National Donut Day. I'm in.
Right?
All right.
Forget everything else. I heard donuts.
All right. Editor Michael Swager, we have a jam-packed issue in here. You go all over the place. We're even talking about Lute Olson later on. But how about the cover story? Tell us about that, because that's really exciting.
How about the cover story? Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you both. I'm tickled to publish our cover story about Iowa author Mildred Augustine. Anyone who grew up reading the Nancy Drew novels knows that, may or may not know by now, that for decades they were written by ghostwriters. And Mildred Augustine from Ledora, Iowa, was the author who wrote the first 7 volumes of the Nancy Drew mystery series. She ended up penning 23 of the first 30. So there's a little bit of intrigue and mystery there in our cover story that goes hand in hand with the whole Nancy Drew concept. And our cover image there is a birthday card that someone made for Mildred's 80th birthday. And the University of Iowa Libraries were kind enough to open up their archive to us to share some artwork for us. And what's really great about the story is that it's authored by Barbara Lounsbury, professor emerita from the University of Northern Iowa. And full disclosure, I was a student of hers 30 years ago when I was pursuing my English major there. She was my favorite professor. So I'm especially tickled to be able to publish this story, to present it, and have Barbara graciously lend her time and talent to write the story, because there's no greater expert on the subject than her. She travels the state speaking about Nancy Drew and Mildred Augustine, and I attended one of her lectures in Des Moines a couple of years ago when she spoke at the library on Franklin Avenue. And I went because I wanted to see her. It had been a long time, but I was also fascinated to learn the truth behind who was writing all these Nancy Drew books. And I was just bowled over by the depth of knowledge that she had about the subject matter and how well she presented it. So I was just grateful that she was able to lend her talents to us.
Yeah, and a title, when you say Nancy Drew, that spans so many generations. And so it's kind of fun to learn where it originally came from. Thinking that Nancy Drew is 90 is pretty amazing. But more than 200 million copies of the mysteries, they were turned into old films and are continued to be recreated in many, many ways, even to today, and even outsold the counterparts of the Hardy Boys. Nancy Drew was more popular than the Hardy Boys.
That's right, and the Hardy Boys started a few years earlier. You know, what's really great, Barbara pulls so many threads into the story with the Iowa connection, but one of them is that when Mildred really created the character of Nancy Drew, it was based on her Iowa experiences, her Iowa values, her upbringing. Mildred was a championship swimmer at the University of Iowa, so there are times when Nancy's a swimmer. She was a golfer. There's one of the volumes where Nancy wins a golf tournament, I believe, with a broken hand. And Mildred was also a pilot until her 80s. She flew several planes, and that gets incorporated in the books as well. So there's so much Iowa and so much of Mildred in those Nancy Drew novels. It almost makes you want to go back and reread them just to look for that now that you know it.
Absolutely.
That's why she's in an airplane on the cover.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Hey, Michael, I want to jump over to the story about Lute Olson. There's so many Iowa Hawkeye fans that are watching right now. And this guy, even though a lot of people remember him from being in Arizona, Iowa is where a lot of people got their first glimpse of this guy.
Exactly. And, you know, Lute was the last coach to take the Hawkeyes to the Final Four in 1980. Longtime Hawkeye fans remember that team. I was a youngster. I vaguely remember that team. Ronnie Lester, of course, was a standout player on that squad. And I think if Ronnie's knees would have held up, they would have won it all. But that was the last time they went to the Final Four. Lute was really the coach that transitioned the program, because if it wasn't for Lute, they wouldn't have Carver Hawkeye Arena. He only coached a handful of games there before he left for Arizona after the Hawkeyes lost to Villanova in the third round of the 1983 NCAA tournament. So he really helped build that program, and of course all the success that took place afterwards with coaches like George Raveling and Tom Davis, and now we are years later with Fran McCafferty.
There are just tons of stuff. Great pictures in here, too.
Absolutely. What else can we look forward to in the latest issue?
Well, we have another story about a famous mobster named Meyer Lansky, who is a very well-known. He was one of the most successful and wealthy gangsters in U.S. history, and he founded the New York crime syndicate. As a matter of fact, his life was the impetus for the characters of Hyman Roth and Michael Corleone in The Godfather Part 2. And you're wondering, how does someone like that have a connection to Iowa? Well, in the 40s, he became a leaseholder of a dog track in Council Bluffs. And so that's the connection to Iowa. It seems like something out of the water, but it's true. The Kathy Kunzer, who wrote the story for us, it's her first story. Her father actually worked at the track and I believe knew him. And all the research that she did was that all the comments about him was that he was a beloved member of the community and everyone liked him, including the police, that there were no problems. But it was a very interesting twist to Iowa history to think that someone with that kind of depth in the mob, was operating a dog track. And at the time, of course, gambling was illegal in Iowa, but they found a way around it to have the dogs run there in Council Bluffs.
All right, so just a lot inside of this edition, the November-December edition of the Iowa History Journal.
All right, remind us where we can pick up the latest issue, or if you just want it mailed to you, that's possible. Or if you're looking for great gift ideas for the holidays, this is a great idea. Tell us how we can get involved and make this part of our lives.
Yes, you can pick up the current issue at Hy-Vee or Fairway, or go to our website, iowahistoryjournal.com, to buy it and to subscribe. And I'm glad you mentioned the gift angle, Jackie, because it really makes a tremendous gift, especially for Iowans who seem to have everything. Go online. You can shop early. You can shop safely and do it quickly. And we're happy to spread all the stories that we're telling about Iowa's rich history to Iowans in our state and beyond.
Just think about that. Every 2 months, this shows up in whoever you gave it to's mailbox. How cool is that?
I learned something every single issue. It is quite entertaining and a wonderful read. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. Great to see you.
Always a pleasure. Happy holidays. Stay safe.
Thank you.
You too, buddy. All right.